What's going on, guys? So it looks like we got a lot of great opportunities coming into this week. I'm going to cover some of my favorite ones, and I'm going to try to SPY, QQ, and some individual tickers with you guys. So as you guys can see right here on SPY, we had a pretty bearish day on Friday. We closed, we got a pretty nice sell-off, as you guys can see this candle. The next level we would want to pay attention to is this recent low right here at 442.74. As you guys can see, that is an important level, which was this recent low. Anything below that, looks like we're going to start having room back down into this 440 level and back down into these 436 to 435, 430, 433 levels. So that is a move to the downside. We could potentially have a slight pullback to this 446.58 for potential rejects. It already looks like we're starting to push down. But yeah, I'd like for a break and retest of this level for a push down into these levels down here, right? So something like this, right? That would look really, really good. Now, for the upside, I'm not really too interested unless we start reclaiming some of these levels up here, which is pretty high up, back above these 448s to 450s. I'm not too interested in upside as of right now unless we start reclaiming those levels. So that is my game plan for SPY. Just keep it super, super simple. Below this recent low, we can start pushing down to these lows right here at 440, first target, 436, and 435. We do have FOMC on Wednesday, I believe, so definitely something to pay attention to. Let's get into the QQ chart. Very, very similar, right? This recent low here is at 369. Anything below 369, it looks like we have room down into 365, really, right? So I'll grab that 367 level too. But 367, 365, and below that, it is a clean sell-off down into the 360 level. I'm not interested in upside on this either unless we start reclaiming that 378 to 380 level. Just keep things very simple overall. We did close with a pretty bearish candle. Looks like we're heading lower. Let's get into some of the individual tickers. Overall game plan on these is super simple. As you guys can see, the weekly 9 EMA is also at that 369 level. So I need to see a clear below that, right? A clean break and retest below that. Potential reject at this 375. And let's cover some individual tickers that I am watching. So Amazon, right? Amazon looks like it could be a potential head and shoulders here. Amazon was one of the strongest names for the past couple weeks. And we're finally starting to get rejected. If I go to the weekly chart, you guys will be able to see we formed like this weekly bearish hammer off of a previous resistance at 146. And we sold off all the way back down into 140. 140 was the breakout level from over here. Notice how 140 broke, retested, and we got that move up. And that was on the Sunday watches from last week, which played out really, really well. But now we're getting back into that 140 level. We want to see how that 140 level reacts. What I see here is a left shoulder ahead, and we can get a potential right shoulder around that same area, around 143. And we could potentially take a reject around this area for a move back down, or a break and retest of 140 gets us back down into 137, and below 137 is back down into these 134s. Super simple game plan on Amazon. Keep your risk to rewards tight, right? If I were to take that right shoulder, stops above right shoulder. If I take the break and retest, stop loss above that 140, targeting 137, and so on. Microsoft actually looks pretty solid as well, right? We broke this trend line, right? Microsoft's been on this slight trend, and it's been slowing down a lot. We finally got a break below it. Looks like we could potentially get a pullback to this 335 and reject. As you guys see, we rejected multiple times here before. Or we have a huge level of support at 329 and 327. So I'd be paying attention to this 327 level. As you guys can see, it holds up multiple times over here. If we can get a break and retest of this 327 level, it looks like a nice move back down into 320s, right? So definitely keep an eye on Microsoft for that. It looks pretty weak. Like it wants to get continued move to the downside. This daily candle is pretty aggressive with some selling volume. So any type of pullback will be great. So we can catch a short back down, or if it continues to just sell off below 327, looks pretty good, right? This trend line has now broken. Next setup that I really like is NVIDIA. We had this on the watch list last week below 450. And this little zone right here that held up and bounced once, twice, 3 times, we have now broken below it. Notice how when we broke below, we retested that zone and we shot down back into this 437 level. So if I go to the daily chart on NVIDIA, still looks really, really weak, like it still wants continued downside with some selling volume on the daily. Next target is 434. And below 434, this has a lot of room to sell off. So this looks really, really good for continued sell-off. We'll continue to look for rejects around this zone here, around 445 to 443, 443 to 445 area. That is a zone that I would like for NVIDIA to stay below in order for me to take rejects off that zone. So that is a great reject zone for NVIDIA. AMD is approaching a pretty key level as well. 100 psychological level has always been a huge demand for AMD every time we step in here. Buyers always step in off of that 100 level, right? But if I go to the daily chart on AMD, this is not a type of candle I would want to take a bounce off of, right? Unless it really starts to slow down on Monday around that 100, then I'll look for calls around that 100 with stops below. But as of right now, I will be interested in breaking retests below that 100 level for AMD before I push back down into this 95 level. As you guys can see on the daily chart, literally nothing but room back down into those 95 levels. Anytime we break below 100, we push down to that 95 level. So that is the game plan overall for AMD. It's probably going to be a level before, probably like that 97. Right? It's not going to just shoot all the way down, but definitely keep an eye on those next two targets for AMD. You definitely draw a trend line right here that's been holding down. If AMD at any given point starts to hold 100, it's going to push back up to this trend line. If it breaks this trend line, it's going to take off. But as of right now, it's not looking like that's the case. Meta also below 300, right? It's daily candle. A lot of things are looking pretty bearish. FOMC could change everything. Below 300, as long as it stays below 301, 302 to 300, this looks like it'd be a move down into 296 and 295. See what happens with that. Google is the only name that still looks relatively strong. Hasn't gotten a big sell-off like the other ones. If the market gets strong, this will be the name to pay attention to, as it's continuously holding up. Tesla has been up 10% over the past week, still really, really strong. Finally starting to slow down a bit. Just keep an eye on this structure at 266. Anything below that, it could head down into 260. So just a slight move, right? Anything below that trend line should start pushing down lower. Above 280, keep an eye for that 285 level and then back up into 300. So that is what I'll look for on Tesla. Still not a really good setup that I fully like on it yet, but we'll see as how it develops into the week. Netflix was super, super weak as well, right? We broke back below 400. If this can stay below 400, this has nothing but room down into 380s. Not an exact setup that I'm fully looking at yet, but I will continue to keep an eye on this as it does look weak. I don't have a reject level or anything just yet, but I will have to update this probably 400. See what that 400 level starts to react like. Setup that I really, really like is UPS. So UPS on the weekly chart, notice how every time we come down into this 155 to 157 level, buyers step in aggressively, right? Look at back here in 2021, push it all the way up to 200s. Back here in 2022, October, pushed it back up into the 190s. Here we are, we formed a bullish weekly hammer off of that level. And I think we have room up into 166. So if I go to the daily chart, look at that weekly candle first of all, right? Now if I go to the daily chart, this is what the daily candle looks like. So I grab the low of that candle at 159 and the high of that candle at 161.47. I'm gonna go down to the 4-hour. I'm gonna go down to the 5-minute actually. But look at the 4-hour, it looks like a nice hammer off of that low there. If I go to the 5-minute time frame, you guys will see how this level held up really nice on Friday and we caught a bounce off of it. So as long as we stay above 160 to 159, this looks like it'd be a great risk to reward for a break of that high of 161.47 And the next level of resistance is really up here in this into this 166 level. I think that is the target for UPS. As you guys can see, this was a previous demand zone that held up really, really well. And once we broke below it, we have not came back to retest it. So I think that if UPS continues to hold up this 159, 160 level, it should get a push up into 160. If not, this will take time to develop, right? If this starts breaking below 159 again, it's going to get a push back down into this demand zone. And this demand zone would just be another opportunity for dip buys. Anything below that zone, the UPS is going to get pretty ugly, right? Because that has nothing but room back down into 135. So it's definitely something to pay attention to. I think we do see some relief before. So that's the Sunday watches, guys. Nothing too crazy. You know, we got FOMC on Wednesday. Definitely just keep things risk off until then and just play these setups. They look pretty good. So hope you guys enjoy the Sunday watches, and I hope you guys have a great trading week.